Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker is now just 18 days away from its official release by Disney, Lucasfilm, J.J. Abrams, and even creator George Lucas, that is all set and ready to end the Skywalker saga and the sequel trilogy itself. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, one thing about Episode 9 that a lot of fans are very much curious about is, of course, all of the different revelations that will unfold in this movie. We're talking about all the different twists and turns that will happen in the first, second, and third acts of Episode 9. That's going to change how we view some of the characters from the prequels, the originals, and even the new ones in the sequels. And exactly how that's all going to be utilized by J.J. Abrams is really what's worrying a lot of fans right now. A lot of fans are very cautious with The Rise of Skywalker after coming out of The Last Jedi and the backlash that it received back in December of 2017 when it released by Rian Johnson. Now, with that being said, this movie does have a lot of surprises coming our way, apparently, according to, Anthony Daniels and Yuna Suetamo and all the other cast members that talked about the film. And what's really intriguing has all to do with some of the twists and turns. Now, specifically, shot descriptions consisting of a sequence where it's explained that Rey, Ben Solo, and Palpatine are all said to be within his throne room on Exegol, where Sidious is described to give Rey a lecture about the dark side of the Force and the origins of its power, where Rey begins to try and break free from Palpatine's Force freeze. It's explained that Sidious unveils many revelations to Rey in the ending of the film that will change elements of the sequel trilogy and other films as well. It's said that Palpatine is the one who created the Dark Rey visions in the movie, and that the Dark Rey vision is based off of a real future of Rey that actually exists if she decides to become Palpatine's new apprentice. It's explained that the Dark Rey vision is not just a vision of Rey as a Sith, but it's a glimpse into an actual future that Palpatine sees and projects within Rey's mind. Rey is able to defeat this future version of herself by destroying Palpatine at the end of the film, with the help of Force ghosts from the past. Additionally, it's explained that both Luke and Leia, during the events of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, knew about Rey being a Palpatine all along. It's said that it's the main reason why Leia sent Rey to Luke at the very end of The Force Awakens was because when Leia hugged Leia, when Leia actually hugged Rey, she realized who she really was and where she came from. Leia figured that Luke would train and help her through the ways of the Force, and that Luke eventually realized who Rey really was in The Last Jedi once she tapped into the darkness within the Mirror Cave on Thew. This is said to be explained by Luke's Force Ghost at one point, and by Leia at some point during her training in the film. It's said that also the Force Ghosts of the past that help Rey fight Palpatine is said to be an ancient power given to the Force Ghosts by the Wills, who are godlike beings that allow characters like Anakin, Luke, and more to help Rey fight Palpatine without the Wills' help. This would be impossible. The Force Ghosts helping Rey would be impossible because this is actually an ancient power that the Wills allow to the Netherworld, and now that the Wills play a role into Rey getting energy from the Netherworld of the Force. So let's go over a couple of parts about these different twists and turns within the third act of Episode 9 and other parts of the movie that's really going to define exactly how some of the characters are going to be utilized in this movie by JJ. Now, let's focus in on the character of Rey. A lot of fans out there are very much intrigued about how the character of Rey is going to be handled. A lot of fans are very much cautious, going into this movie, like I said, after The Last Jedi backlash, hoping that the twists and turns will actually be far better and superior than the ones that we even got in The Last Jedi. Now, these in particular, alright, I want to go over the Dark Rey sequence. Now, the Dark Rey visions in the movie are said to not just be visions per se, but they are actually said to be actual glimpses into a future of a version of Rey that Palpatine sees, that he projects within Rey's mind. So, this is a very strange thing. Now, it is a vision still, but apparently it's just a vision within Palpatine's mind of what Rey really will become if she becomes his apprentice, where he actually is able to project that future version of Rey into the form of an actual embodiment of the dark side of the Force that allows Rey to fight Dark Rey. So does that mean that the vision of Rey is just in her head, or it's an actual vision that materializes in front of Rey, that's a big question open on the table. We do know that there are a number of dark Rey sequences in this movie, one of which is actually said to take place in the second Death Star wreckage, where she touches the Wayfinder device and begins to see the dark Rey vision. So that's one thing about Palpatine and Rey's connection, is that Palpatine is able to initiate these visions of dark Rey that basically are showing her a future version of herself. The other thing that I want to tap into that I think a lot of fans are going to find very interesting, that kind of changes how we view Luke and Leia in The Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi. So, at the very end of The Force Awakens, Leia actually knew that Rey was a Palpatine all along. Now, that's exactly why Leia sent Rey over to Luke Skywalker on Ahch-To, is because she figured that Luke would help her and train her through the ways of the Force, or guide her to a lighter side. And that, to me, I think is a very interesting thing by JJ, and also the fact that in The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker also realized who Rey really was once she actually tapped too much into the darkness, where she's meditating on the boulder on Ahch-To, and Luke says, you know, you went straight to the dark, you didn't even try to stop yourself. That's the exact moment in which Luke realizes that Rey is a descendant of the Palpatine bloodline and family. So that's a very interesting thing for JJ to kind of reshape how we view Luke and Leia's reactions in The Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi. The only thing that doesn't make sense to me is, if Leia knew that Rey was a Palpatine all along, why in the world would she actually throw Rey over to the world of Ahch-To for Luke to train her if it didn't work for Ben Solo? And that the fact that she's a descendant of Palpatine of all things, you know, you'd think it would be worse, right? So that's the only thing that I don't get. I do get, however, the Luke Skywalker reaction of how, at that point in time, he figured out exactly who she really was. And it's the main reason as to why he did not want to train her eventually even more further. So, moving on, I think the twist that I like the best out of the third act of Episode 9 has to do with the power of the Force Ghosts and how the wills play a role in this particular moment in which Rey is going to get power, or energy if you will, from the netherworld of the Force by the Force Ghosts of Luke, Yoda, Kenobi, Leia, and more that actually help her out to fight Palpatine. This is said to be a power all initiated by the wills, who are godlike beings, by the way. These are deities, if you will, that watch over the entire universe and created the entire universe, that allow the Force Ghost to perform such an action on Rey. So that's very interesting. The fact that the wills play a role in that power is essentially making Rey a god. That I think a lot of fans are going to be quite divided over. The fact that Rey is getting this godlike power from the wills that are handed down to the Force Ghosts that are then handed down to Rey. And that, to me, I think is going to create a great divide. I'm still, in a complete, moment of, disagreeing with J.J. Abrams and his decision of making Rey the one to kill Palpatine and making her the chosen one, essentially, and making her the powerful figure that destroys Sidious once and for all. I feel that it should have really been Kylo Ren, or maybe even at minimum, both Kylo Ren and Rey fighting Palpatine to the death at once, a 2-on-1 battle, would have been a bit more realistic if you guys had to really ask me, and if I really had to be honest. Yes, it would be a lot more realistic if you had two figures fighting Palpatine that had that power, instead of just one. So that's just my take on things here. And the last thing I just want to go over is that this movie is said to have so many twists and turns. It's like every single moment in the first, second, and third act, there is going to be some form of revelation, either in a minor or a major way, from start to finish of Episode 9. So you can only imagine how it's going to change our view of the originals and the prequels, but not just those trilogies, but also a majority of the sequel trilogy. How we're going to view elements of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi is going to be a big deal by J.J. Abrams, right? So here we are, 18 days to go until the release of Episode 9. We are just weeks away now until this movie's going to drop, where a lot of fans will be able to express their opinions and their feelings about the film and where it all stands with the fans in general around the world. So, with that being said, I would really love to hear what you guys have to say about all of this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Simba.